Take a look at this 30-year stock market journey for Reliance Infrastructure. What do you see here? A business that has given exponential returns to its investors. The wealth of the investors multiplied in a matter of few years, and this is what I call the growth or the wealth building phase. This phase is followed by a wealth destruction phase. Almost 80% of the investors' wealth wiped out in a matter of 1 year from 2008 to 2009. This phase, starting from 2009 up until 2020, is a value erosion phase. Yes, the stock did see some recovery, but over a period of 10 years, a large part of the stock's value was eroded and wiped out. Then from 2020, we see a turnaround where the business has given almost 300% returns to its investors. But is this exactly a turnaround? Should you invest in Reliance Infrastructure stock? What are the financials looking like? What were the reasons of its growth and the reasons of its downfall? All of that, let's find out in this video. Alright, let's take a look at the growth phase of Reliance Infra. But first things first, Reliance is an infrastructure-based company that develops projects in high growth sectors such as power, metros, rails, roads, even defense for that matter. So the growth of this company is directly related to the growth of these sectors. Now, if you take a look at this chart that you see on the screen, the stock got listed in 1993 at a price of 120 rupees. By 2008, this stock was trading at a price of 2500. This is a growth of almost 2000%. Yes, 2000% returns in a span of 15 years. Now, you might not get a lot of clarity from these numbers, but on a year-on-year basis, this translates to a 46% CAGR, compounded annual growth returns, which means that on an average, the stock gave 46% returns every year to its investors. Imagine the kind of wealth generated for the investors of Reliance Infra. But why did all of that happen? Now, this was a phase where India was developing and sectors like power, roads, rails, even defense for that matter, gained a huge traction. They were the crux, the backbone of this developing economy, and naturally, if these sectors were developing, a similar growth was shown by Reliance Infra as well. This was a period where they bagged big deal projects, not just from the government space but from the private space as well. This was a time where they had foresight of the amount of orders they are going to receive in the future. They had a very healthy order book, which was translating to a phenomenal top line, which is a revenue growth for them. You combine all these factors and this translates to the stock market performance that you see in this chart. But this dream run for Reliance Infra had to come to an end. Let's find out what happened and the reasons behind the same. Take a look at this wealth destruction phase for Reliance Infra. From a high of 2,500 that it had hit in early 2008, the stock reached a low of 500 rupees in 2009. This is a massive destruction of almost 80% of the investors' wealth. Now, unfortunately for Reliance Infra, this growth phase that they were in was coincided by a global financial crisis of 2008. The world was in a recessionary phase. The banks and other financial institutions were at the forefront of this crisis, and because these infrastructure-based projects are funded by these financial institutions, Reliance Infra also took a huge blow. The speed at which Reliance Infra was operating had to slow down. Some of the projects that they were working even halted, and the order book was no longer as steady as it used to be. This is because the companies which were giving them orders were no longer comfortable with those orders given the uncertainty around the global financial crisis. But Reliance Infra had to continue its operations. It did have some amount of debt in its balance sheet, but that number went out of control because the order book was going thin every year on year. As a result of this, Reliance wiped out almost 80% wealth in only 1 year. But post 2009, when the global financial crisis, when the situation improved around the crisis, did Reliance Infra stage a comeback? Let's find out. Take a look at this phase from 2009 to 2020 post the crisis. With the global financial crisis, with the situation around that crisis improving, even Reliance Infra showed some recovery. And that is something you can see in this chart as well. The stock hit a high of 1300 rupees in this period. But post that, there were no signs of improvement at all. In fact, the low that the stock hit at this point of time was 25 rupees. Why did all of this happen? To understand this, take a look at the revenue that the company reported on a year-on-year basis. This is from 2012 up until 2020. What do you see here? A very uneven trend. No signs of consistent growth in revenue. In fact, if you take a look at this chart closely, you will see that the revenue that they reported in 2020 is lesser than the revenue that they reported in 2012, which was 8 years back. So imagine this kind of situation where the revenue of the company is not growing at all. Not just in terms of revenue. Take a look at the profit chart. During the second half of this phase, the company even slipped to a loss-making firm. This had to happen because the orders that they were receiving were not increasing consistently, which is why their bottom line also suffered. And as a result of this, the stock continuously eroded in value and hit a low of 25 rupees in 2020. But post that, the stock was getting ready for a turnaround. It was to see a massive increase in its stock value. What happened in this turnaround and why did it happen? Let's find out. First things first, the stock from a low of 25 rupees is currently trading at over 130 rupees, which is 400% growth in a span of 2 years. Why did that happen? We have learned that the revenue or the profit are not growing at a consistent scale for Reliance Infra. But the major challenge that Reliance Infra had was with respect to its debt, because that was increasing on a year-on-year basis, and that is where the signs of recovery have started to show up. Reliance Infra won a major or a very big case against the Delhi Metro. As a result of this, Mr. Anil Ambani, in his own words, Reliance Infra is expected to become a debt-free company in the next couple of quarters. Now, if a company which was reeling under mammoth debts suddenly announces that it might turn debt-free, this is a very big news for the stock market and for the company in general. This is why you see the kind of growth that you're currently seeing in this particular chart. A huge amount of recovery from the lows that it had hit in 2020. But can this recovery be sustainable? What is the projection of the future of Reliance Infra and what is my personal recommendation on the stock? Let's find out in this segment. Before I give you my personal recommendation on this stock, take a look at this trend line. This will give you the percentage holdings by the promoters in the company from 2019 till the end of 2021. What do you observe here? A continuously declining trend. The promoters held 41% of the company in 2019, which has now come down to 5% by the end of 2021. If you talk about FII, which are the large foreign institutional investors which pump in a huge amount of money, for them the holding has come down from 31% to 1% in the company. What does that suggest? That means that the large enough players, that the owners of the company do not have a very optimistic view on the company, and that is why their share is consistently going down. On the other hand, if you take a look at the percent holdings of people like you and me, the common public, that has gone up from 20% in 2019 to 80% in 2021, by the end of 2021. Now that suggests that a large part of the holdings that have been relinquished, that have been released by the owners and by the foreign institutional investors has been taken up by common people like you and me, who in a lot of cases do not have a very good view of the company or its financial performance. This suggests that the owners themselves are not confident about the company. Then how can common people like you and me invest in this stock? But another truth is that yes, the investors have earned a lot of money in the past 2 years. And to be honest, this can even grow further in the future. This is a stock that is owned by Mr. Anil Ambani and is the brother of Mr. Mukesh Ambani. So any sort of relief, any sort of benefit can be given to this company. But if you look at the core fundamentals of this company, they are definitely not good. So my personal opinion is that it is a very risky stock, a very volatile stock. And if you want to invest here, please do it at your own risk, but understand the kind of risks that are going to come along with it. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the analysis of Reliance Infra. Do subscribe to Finance Lens, and I'll see you the next time.